Hello. I think we are
Hello,
live. Yes, we can begin.
we're live. Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of another session of reflections. Let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Ishwari Boga, and I work as an intern with Ather, and I am a student of Asira Mams. And let's kick this off. I would start by introducing you all to Ather. Ather Center for Psychotherapy and Training is a specialized training and consultancy center addressing mental health and depression based in Thane. A little about Asira ma'am. Asira ma'am is the director of our center. She is a certified trainer of rational emotive and cognitive behavior therapy from Albert Einstein Institute, New York, and Beck Institute for Cognitive Behavior Therapy, USA. She offers scientific therapy sessions for managing various emotional difficulties like anxiety, depression, anger, etc. And also, she's conducted more than 150 workshops and training programs for mental health professionals, psychiatrists, social workers, special educators, students, and general public. Now, coming to reflection as an initiative by Atha, uh, Atha Center has introduced these live sessions with an inquisitive group of hosts uh, and who are passionate about working for mental health and well-being. The purpose behind these sessions are to create a platform wherein together we can reflect, inquire, and contemplate for a greater common goal of enhancing mental health. And our today's topic is insights into suicide and depression. And in this session, I'll be asking ma'am some questions and she'll be answering them for us. And we invite all the viewers to ask questions or doubts in case you have any, and we'll certainly address them at the end of the session. Ma'am, would you like to say something?
I think it's great to have these sessions. Mainly, the objective was to get together and reflect upon important topics and have questions. We can address many questions that you can have. So, definitely use this
Yes.
opportunity to connect with us, right? And please do not substitute this session for therapy this is not like a comprehensive session where we are going to talk about all the intricate details. This is more an awareness focused discussion. So you can definitely write to us if you want to know more about any concepts which we will discuss today.
Yes, certainly. Shall we get into it and start our
Yes,
session, ma'am?
yes, surely we can do that.
Yes, okay. So, talking about insight into suicide and depression, viewers. And, ma'am, my first question to you would be people around, they know what suicide is, and we've heard about so many um, gruesome news about people committing suicide due to various reasons. Recently, COVID has been one of the reasons why people have been committing suicide, due to fear of contracting this deadly virus and all. We look at the what and, when and all, but we do not focus on the reasons behind, and how and what leads to a person who takes such a step. So my first question to you would be, what makes a person take such a step, and what are the risk factors?
Right. And it is very important for all of us, actually, even as a community, and to use this platform also to reflect on these risk factors. I think the most important risk factor for suicide can also be related to mental health conditions. There are so many mental health conditions which are not treated or which are ignored. Mental health conditions like depression, like anxiety, like personality disorders. So one of the risk factors is if you have a mental health condition and if you have not taken comprehensive treatment for it, if you are not addressing it in a systematic way, that is the most important risk factor, according to me. Another risk factor I think, which we can talk about is somewhere, see, if there is a conflict issue, maybe in the home environment, and if an individual doesn't know how to manage conflict, so if conflict resolution is not worked on, that is also something which is important. So conflict resolution, disaster crisis. So if there is a disaster and if you do not know how to manage uh, this crisis situation, so inability to uh, face crisis situations and actually be able to manage them, this could be another risk factor. Other risk factors could be related to physical illness, where there is an experience of chronic pain, and individuals do not know how to manage and address this, chronic pain. Even that could be one of the risk factors, right? So there are various risk factors. Looking at their own individual risk factors can also be there. Like for example, you do not know how to problem solve, you do not know the skills to probably regulate your emotions. So risk factors can come from various angles. Based, individual risk factors, there are environmental risk factors, as you said about the COVID-19, which is an environmental risk factor. That could be one. For example, if there is a financial crisis, if there is a issue, is a concern, if there is a concern at work, right? If there is a loss of a job, if there is financial crisis, those are environmental factors. Then there are community based factors. If there is no employment, maybe in particular community, if there is certain discrimination in the community, even that could be a part of community risk factors. Then there are even national risk factors, like there's a national pandemic, there could be a national financial crisis, economic crisis. Then there are global risk factors too. So I think risk factors can be categorized into individual, social, community, national, global risk factors. And importantly is your own mental health condition. I think if that is left untreated, if you do not pay attention to what mental health practices you follow, if you are experiencing extreme sadness, if you are experiencing mental health concerns, it is very important to treat those. And lastly, one of the most strongest risk factor, especially for suicide, is previous suicide attempts. There have been cases where clans have previously committed, attempted suicide. So this previous attempts at suicide, they are important risk factors too. This is in short to answer your question.
Yeah, and also I've seen unfortunately that suicidal thoughts as well are so overlooked. I've come across situations where people who did have just mere thoughts about attempting suicide have been overlooked, and even that could be a potential risk factor. But sadly, it's ignored.
See that comes. I would say these thoughts related to suicide is a part of could be a part of depression. That is one of the factors of depression too, which I said about the mental health condition. So definitely you need to
Yeah.
really go to a psychiatrist and understand what is your, you know, where you are with reference to your mental health today. And if there are any concerns, you need to get it addressed with the help of a psychiatrist and with the help of a psychotherapist.
I hope more and more people are aware of this and take the appropriate steps towards this.
Definitely, and we have
Coming
so
to,
many, yeah, we have so
yeah,
many people today who are listening to this talk right now. So if you guys can tell us, what are the risk factors that you have seen maybe in your community, maybe individually
yeah,
also, what is your perception on what are the risk factors for suicide, you can also probably communicate with us.
surely. And I'd like to tell the viewers again that if, in case you have any questions or doubts, you can write them down in the comment section and we will surely address them, but at the end of the session, towards the end.
Right.
And yeah, carrying on with our session, my second question would be, since we are also talking about depression and now we talked about suicide, coming to depression, I had a question that to what extent can depression be dysfunctional? What, to what extent can the negative impact be seen? could happen when it comes to depression.
Right. So that
and
you're
and
talking.
also, yeah, and also some of the early signs and how to help, because as we all know that depression is considered not a very serious conditions, and it is misunderstood uh, as being sad or being just
Hmm.
feeling low, or people also, there are so many misconceptions about depression. So could you
Right.
please elaborate more on what exactly it is, what are the early signs, and what could we do to prevent it?
Right. I will talk about what is depression and what are the early signs, definitely. But before that, I think Sneha, yes, you are right. Relationship issues, yes, that could be one of the risk factors too. When I was talking about conflict, we can definitely talk about conflicts, you know. So a lot of interpersonal conflicts that people experience, even that could be one of the risk factors. That's true. So the next question that you asked me, say depression is a mood disorder, and in depression is also definitely called as major depressive disorder, clinical depression. I'm majorly looking at clinical depression here, where individuals experience a persistent, loss of interest, or there's a persistent feeling of sadness. Individuals also feel they feel empty within. They feel very guilty, and that guilt is very excessive and inappropriate at times, but it is very excessive. Some individuals might also experience worthlessness. What is my worth? They might start questioning their own worth as an individual or as a human. This can also trigger a lot of hopelessness and helplessness. Right? Another way in which depression also expresses itself through physical problems. I've had so many clients talking about headache, back pain, right? Issues related to digestion. So many physical issues can also come up, which can also be a very important symptom in depression. And you see, with depression, many a times clients also experience a lot of anxiety. They also experience lack of energy. They might feel overwhelmed a lot many times and also feel very tired. So these could be some symptoms of depression. And it is a very, very important mental health condition because it can impact you not only at an individual, on an individual level, but also with reference to your work. Your occupational life is also hindered. Your social interactions, they have, there are roadblocks seen even in those interactions. You're not able to maintain relationships. You don't feel like maintaining relationships. So depression can impact you not only on an individual level, but also with reference to your social life, also occupational life, right? So it is very important to understand depression in depth and address it with a systematic treatment, evidence-based treatment plan. So this is about what is depression, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything you would want to ask
Yeah.
on this?
Yes. uh yeah, then, and my major question was, how dysfunctional could it get? I mean, I think you did cover some of the symptoms and that show the dysfunctionality of this illness, but to what extent could it go?
See, as I said, depression, definitely these symptoms are there, but I think every client will experience these symptoms in one's own way. There is a unique way in which these symptoms will be represented in each client. So you have to actually see the client who is there in front of you and understand. Like some clients might express it, they will start questioning their capabilities. They will start having low self confidence. Some clients I've seen they might overeat. Some clients I've seen they have loss of appetite, right? So I
Yeah.
think its
Yeah.
representation is very unique and very subjective. But
Hmm.
definitely, this entire condition feels very overwhelming for the client. The client really feels very heavy, and it's like a constant pressure on self. They're not able to they're less likely to be cheered or comforted or consoled. And they
Yeah.
do not enjoy activities which they used to enjoy before. They do not find any enjoyment or joy in those activities, right? But to answer how much it impacts, that depends on the individual's capacity, that depends again on the individual's environment, on the individual's occupational life, and definitely whether the client has any protective factors. Now this is very important, whether these clients have protective factors. So there are risk factors for depression, and there are also protective factors for depression.
Would this protective factor include their support systems?
Definitely, that is one part. That's true. You're right in that. In one of the facet of protective factors is is having a very good support system, where you have family and friends who check on you. They are connecting. They are with you. They are connected with you. They are trying to understand your feelings and thoughts. But in protective factors, one of the majorly what you say ignored and actually very important protective factor is clinical care. Whether you have exposure to clinical care, whether you do engage in mental health practices, this is one of the most important protective factors. Your knowledge about clinical care, your knowledge about treatment, uh, aspects for depression, that is another protective factor. One more protective factor, which, if I want to talk about, is also whether you have what kind of goals you have in life, what kind of ambitions you have in life.
Hope.
Yes, that is also another protective factor. So there are a lot of interesting protective factors which can definitely be clubbed into preventive strategies. So, as we talked about, Ishwari, risk factors in terms of individual, society, community, right? There are also protective factors from individual, from your family and friends, from society, from community. So even protective factors can be thought about in that manner. Like, see, I'll give you an example. From individual, from individuals' scope, protective factor could be having goals, having a vision, having a meaning to why you're doing what you're doing. For maybe with reference to family and friends, having someone to express yourself freely, fully, having friends who validate your experience, who acknowledge what you have gone through, who encourage you, a society which talks and encourages mental health practices, a society which gives exposure to mental health practices, country which focuses on mental health care and prevention. And globally also, if there is a focus and if there is a what you say emphasis on preventing mental health conditions and enhancing mental health practices, these could all be clubbed under protective factors according to me.
Sure, yeah. I'm hoping that our viewers are taking a note of that and they understand and spread this so that more and more people are benefited from this. Also, I think the reason behind why I was asking the impact of depression and to what extent could it go is somehow related to this next question. The next question is, can depression lead to um, a person attempting suicide? Can it lead to a person taking that step? And with that, I would like to club another question. If it does, then what are the other mental health conditions that could also lead to death by suicide?
See, uh, mental health conditions and suicide, they are related. Definitely, they have a relationship. We really need to study more about this relationship, but definitely mental health conditions, if they are left untreated or not diagnosed, or if you do not provide evidence based treatment, uh, what you say, patterns or treatment strategies, then definitely suicide can be one of the concerns which can come up. It can definitely then trigger suicide. Because in depression, one of the symptoms is also having thoughts about ending life, having self harm related thoughts. That is also one of the symptoms in depression that we see in some
Yes,
patients.
yes, yes.
Right? So, depression and suicide definitely they have a very important relationship. That's why I said one of the most important risk factors which I concentrated was on mental health conditions, and in that too, depression is of primary focus. Major depressive disorder is of primary focus there. But there could also be other what you say uh, other mental health conditions which can definitely trigger or influence thoughts related to harming self and taking one's life. Which are these other mental health conditions? So, substance use disorders, indulgence in alcohol, indulgence in drugs. That is also very important. Personality disorders like borderline personality disorder. That is also very important,
Yes, true.
right? So, personality disorders. Then you have your substance use disorders, which are definitely they need to be addressed with the help of a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. And somewhere I've also seen uh, the importance or the significance of psychosis. Even that needs to be treated.
Was about I was
You were
about
about
to
to ask.
ask, does, yeah, is schizophrenia also
Definitely,
can
it is.
be.
It can be. It is related to attempts with reference to suicide. It is one of the factors. See, we can't say it is the only
Yeah,
factor. It is
yeah,
definitely one of the factors. But it is important that we need to address it. And I think here comes the role of a psychiatrist. I'm also not the best person to talk about the treatment with relation to medication. It is very important to address these mental health conditions first with the help of a psychiatrist, whether they will provide you evidence based treatments through medication. And then comes the role of psychotherapy here, where we have evidence based psychotherapies like cognitive behavior therapy, like rational emotive behavior therapy, like dialectical behavior therapy,
yeah.
which are going to help and address these mental health conditions. So I think I covered mood disorders. Then I
Substance
talked about
use.
substance use, which is really very important. Substance use. The link is there. Are you getting this point? So this is important that we
Yes,
address these mental health conditions.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that's a great insight into so many other factors or so many other conditions that could also lead to suicide. I guess people are not aware of these mental health conditions that could also lead to suicide. So yeah,
Right.
I think
That
that that really was one great insight into.
right. And Ishwari, I think I forgot to mention, but also anxiety.
Yeah,
Anxiety is also very much related to depression, we know, but it can also trigger a lot of helplessness, which can then trigger self harm in the form of thinking of taking one's own life.
yeah,
See, when we are saying suicide, we're actually talking about certain thoughts, certain behaviors, certain actions, certain feelings which are disturbed, which are debilitating, which need addressal. And this addressal is not just one type of addressal, it is a comprehensive and multifaceted addressal. That's what I
yes.
think is important.
Speaking of wanting and needing to be addressed, my next question would be, what's the relation between self harm and suicide? And is there a difference between these both?
This is a tricky question, but thank you for coming up with this question. So, self harm versus suicide. See, self harm is a dysfunctional coping strategy that a client can use. Coping strategy means what? Means when you want to cope up with some difficult emotions like loneliness or like stress or like anxiety, We generally, there are some who will use certain coping strategies. So self harm is known to be a dysfunctional coping strategy. Dysfunctional means what? It is not productive. It is not constructive. It is self defeating. So generally, when I see clients who are experiencing disturbed emotions, they might get into a lot of self-harm behaviors where they will probably use these dysfunctional coping strategies. And self-harm means that it will cause injury to you, which could be a minor injury or a high-risk injury. Both can be there. So I've seen many of the times, in order to deal with some difficult thoughts and emotions, clients might get into some self-harm, like for example hitting themselves, which might give them a temporary relief from the pain, but then it then gives rise to guilt, then gives rise to shame. It keeps the cycle keeps continuing. So self harm is a dysfunctional coping strategy, and suicide is a serious public health issue.
Okay.
Suicide has within itself self harm, but suicide also has a lot of other components to it. I already told you with reference to mental health conditions and also other important factors.
Yes, yes.
And self harm, if you do not treat it properly, if you do not address it, if you do not carry some early interventions for managing self harm, it can go towards an attempt in itself and can trigger a lot of other difficult emotions.
Yeah.
So even self harm needs to be managed with early interventions.
I it was important to ask this question because a lot of people, most of the times confuse self harm as an act of suicide, or confuse it with suicide. So it was important to know that there is a difference between the two. So yes,
There is a
and
difference, but just to add one point, there is definitely a difference, but you need to evaluate it comprehensively. It's not like one definition that we can say and we can try to compartmentalize it, that this is self harm or this is
yeah,
suicide. Not like that. You actually need to comprehensively understand it first from the client's point of view,
yeah,
also
yeah,
from the caregiver's point of view, and with the help of a psychiatrist. So there is no like one specific definition for self harm and suicide. How to distinguish both, because they both are interlinked again and interrelated.
yeah.
Hope this helps.
Yes. Coming to the next question, how can a family or a friend deal with the after effects of a person, of a closed one's death by suicide?
Right now, this is firstly, it is very difficult to actually experience, a loss in the form of suicide. It's very very difficult, and it is again a very overwhelming experience even for caregivers. Right, so how to help them? I think we can help them on many levels. First is, if they are going through lot of painful emotions, like sometimes anxiety, depression, guilt, it is very important to, as a family, help them to seek the necessary treatment for it. I'm not saying only in the form of medication, but psychotherapy can be very very helpful for the caregivers. It can really provide lot of emotional support, lot of facilitative conditions where they will be able to manage these painful emotions with a systematic approach. So I would urge all the family members, if you are seeing anyone go through loss in the form of suicide and they are not able to manage their emotions, please direct their attention to professional help. This is the first important point. Second, what can you do as individuals? It is very important that you listen to their emotions and thoughts patiently without giving any advice to them. Because when an individual is going through such a difficult experience, it is very important for us to act as mirrors and to just listen to them and reflect back. That itself will soothe and comfort them to a large extent. We think our advice giving will comfort, but that is not the thing. What will actually help someone feel comforted is your listening, is your active involvement and listening. This is one simple step all of you can do. And second is try not to get alarmed by their difficult thoughts or their disturbing thoughts and ideas. Sometimes even these caregivers can have a lot of disturbing ideas and thoughts. Sometimes they might share with you that, probably I don't want to live anymore. They might share these thoughts. It is important to try not to get alarmed by those and acknowledge the pain behind these thoughts and direct their attention to professional help. Thirdly, with these caregivers, one more technique that you can use is be with them. As far as possible, be with them. Try to stay with them. Try to be in constant touch with them. Try to keep a check on their appetite, their exercise, their routine. Help them follow their routine. Encourage them to follow the routine. These are some simple steps.
I hope this is reaching out to the people who have unfortunately gone through uh, such a similar situation. And with that, we come to our last question of the session, ma'am. Uh, how can it be prevented? How can suicide be prevented? And um, what role can other community level professionals play in preventing suicides? Community. When I say community level professionals, I mean health related, like doctors and you know uh, teachers and police workers. How can all these professionals help in preventing suicide, and how can it be prevented?
Right. So I'll definitely come to this question. But before that, I think I'll answer this question in 3, 4 minutes, and I would want all your questions to come. I'm seeing some 2, 3 questions, but you can now post your questions because we'll be taking your questions now. Right. So to answer your question about prevention, I think prevention is the main focus here. Suicides are preventable, which is a good news for all of us from even a community perspective. And prevention is the goal, prevention is the journey itself, and prevention is the emphasis also here. Because one thing we all need to understand that this is a serious health problem now. We are looking at a serious public health concern, which is suicide. And it needs to be prevented. Again, the role of prevention is not just for the client who is experiencing this, but also for the family members, but also for the community members, also for the society, and for all of us. So, not just mental health professionals or health professionals, I think everyone, all the gatekeepers, to the teachers, the police officers, all of us should come together and we should get equipped with suicide prevention measures, suicide prevention tools, suicide prevention programs. We all should enhance this approach because awareness is the first step towards prevention. The second step towards prevention is educating yourself about mental health. Awareness, education with reference to what is mental health and why it is important. Thirdly, discussion needs to happen with reference to how to implement healthy mental health practices. And the fourth is coping strategies. All the early interventions, I think from the level of school, we all should focus on coping strategies for anxiety, coping strategies for stress, coping strategies for adversities, our emphasis should be prevention through coping. And again, I'll repeat, this is not just the responsibility of mental health professionals or health professionals. I think this is each one's responsibility to build suicide prevention talks, programs, tools, measures. I think it is very important. And when I'm looking at prevention, I'm also looking at psychotherapy as an early intervention and not just for disorder management or distress management. If we have these psychotherapeutic models which are preventive based early from school, look at the impact that it can create on us.
Yeah,
It will prepare
huge.
us to face adversities. COVID pandemic adversity came out of nowhere. But think about a society which prepares its members to get toughened, to become more resilient, to become more hopeful, to create anxiety management capacity within and see if this is if this is what we create, if this is what we can do. I think we will work extensively only with prevention.
And if we also learn since the start healthy coping strategies, that would also help a great deal.
Right. I remember Ishwari in school, even so many of us used to get into unhealthy coping strategies to manage anger, to manage irritability. That time we didn't realize its importance, but today we do because those only become habits, those only become automatic, those only then get reinforced and those strategies can get turned into unhealthy, dysfunctional coping strategies. So I think a society that encourages mental health, healthy mental health practices by early interventions, even through medication, like psychiatrist involvement, and even through a psychotherapist involvement, would be a community to it would be a community which would inspire all of us for sure.
Right, yes. And it was so easily put by you, ma'am, that prevention in 4 steps. Let me repeat it for all the viewers: awareness, education, discussion about suicide, and having talks. And lastly, coming to coping strategies. These are the ways in which we can help prevent suicide, not as a not as a responsibility of just the professionals, but us as a society and as a community, and each one of us who's facing this, because like ma'am repeatedly said, that suicide is a public health concern. And coming to the part where ma'am talked about openly talking about suicide and having discussions about how to cope with it, or how to help other people who've been through that to cope with such situation, I'd like to announce Athar's upcoming webinar on prevention of suicide, preventing suicide toolkit. The details of this webinar will be put up on Athar's page shortly after this live session ends. And I would request and invite each one of you viewers to to attend this webinar and to forward this to your friends and family, and especially to those people who've been through this unfortunate situation in their lives, so that it could help them, and so that we could all create awareness, educate ourselves, have this discussion, and also educate and know about what are the possible healthy coping strategies to come out of the situation, that people people with families who have gone through this the situation of their loved one committing dying by suicide. So yes.
Right, and we have already, like, if you go to our Instagram page, we already have the link in our bio for our suicide prevention toolkit. It is a free webinar, and the free nature is with the intention to reach one and all. So please try to spread about this webinar to everyone so that we can come together as a community and help each other to understand what are the prevention steps. So the entire webinar is going to highlight your prevention toolkit for suicide. It is going to be very interesting and definitely very resourceful.
Yes, definitely. And with that, shall we turn to the questions now, ma'am? I can read it out for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Garima Pradhan says, so does drinking or substance abuse that people get into to avoid something, pain, or as a way of coping with some kind of stress, can be categorized in self harm? So basically, can substance abuse be categorized as self harm?
Right. First of all, thank you for asking this question, Garima. First point here is substance use disorders in itself is a mental health condition which needs addressal, a systematic addressal. One. Secondly, sometimes substance use can definitely be a dysfunctional coping mechanism and can be categorized as self harm. So some individuals, because they are going through depression and they do not probably know how to manage this feeling of hopelessness, they might sometimes turn towards alcohol indulgence to manage their emotional pain. Then it becomes, then it can be categorized as a dysfunctional coping strategy, which is self harm. But remember something, both can be there. It can be substance use can be categorized as a self harm strategy, or it can definitely be a mental health condition which would need addressal. Both definitely needs addressal here.
Next question is by Sneha. Can depression be a result of side effect of any medication?
I think I'm not the best person to answer this question. I wouldn't do more justice to this question, Sneha. So probably I will get back to you through email with a psychiatrist helping you address this question, and I think that would make more sense, right? Because they have more
Yeah.
understanding about the medication aspect here.
Next, we have Alpana asking, does self harm is self harm related only to borderline, or can it be affected alone as an unhealthy mental health condition? Yes.
Self harm is definitely is a part of borderline, and it definitely can even exist as an unhealthy strategy, as I said. See, unhealthy mental health condition are your mental health disorders, your mental disorders, right? So self harm can definitely be a dysfunctional coping strategy here, but in borderline, you also see it very, very extensively. As a symptom, also, you might see sometimes in borderline personality disorder, self harm, right? So I wouldn't call it as an unhealthy mental health condition. Probably I would call it as a dysfunctional coping strategy. And in borderline, it could be one of the major signs. I hope that answers your question, Alpana.
Yes, and I'd also like to read out some insights from our viewers. Shreya says caregivers are also likely to blame themselves because they couldn't be there for the person they've lost to suicide. Yeah, that's so true.
Yes, that is
This,
very true. And sometimes caregivers themselves will go through a lot of depression.
yeah.
They themselves experience depression where they might have excessive guilt, again, which needs to be managed. And cognitive behavior therapy will definitely provide that systematic help.
Isha says a society of acceptance without judgmental bias is the necessity. I think transforming oneself to transform others is
Yes,
another.
that is true. Transforming self to transform others. That is very, very true.
And with that, I guess we come to an end of the session because I don't think there are any more questions for us, ma'am.
Right. So if you guys have any questions to us, which you would want to understand, please probably you can leave your comments in the comment section, and we'll get back to you.
Can you, I guess, can we take up one question? There is a question, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you please tell us how can self harm be a coping strategy? Yes, destructive, but how can it be a coping strategy? Doesn't it add to the already experienced pain?
See, actually, uh, it is destructive because the clients, obviously, it is self defeating. It doesn't help them to manage their emotional issues, but it can give instant relief as maybe a cathartic effect, as maybe an emotional expression, as maybe a venting out strategy. And there is a lot of what you say comprehensive dynamics beneath self harm. Why it can actually be why it can actually provide temporary relief. See, when clients are feeling very overwhelmed, they are emotionally overloaded, and they just want to express in something. So that expression can give instant relief, and that gives instant relief. But they immediately realize it later, sometimes, that it has not helped me to manage my emotional issues. It has not helped me to probably learn some healthy coping strategies to manage my distress. And sometimes they might end up then feeling again very guilty and probably sometimes even very shameful about using self harm. Right? So I may not
Also,
be able
ma'am,
to. Huh?
continue. I'll ask later.
No, I was saying that I may not be able to address all the essential features within self harm. There is lot to it. I'm just answering it in a very quick way.
So I had a question related to what Shreya said. As you said, it can be a form of relief. Can it also be rationale behind it being a coping strategy? Could it also be that the person, uh, you know, as a result of experiencing shame and as a result of wanting to punish oneself, uh, engages in self harm, and that way could it be a coping strategy?
It is. It can also be that way. That probably they want to just express their anger on themselves. So
Yeah.
because of that, see, coping means it just gives instant relief. That doesn't mean it gives a fixable solution, or it doesn't give a healthy solution to the clients. Coping means way of addressing. So we can even we can even define the word coping as the way of addressing or managing that helplessness. Like I see individuals, some individuals will manage helplessness by probably drinking. Some might manage helplessness by maybe playing and going out to play a game of football, right? So some individuals, they just don't know what is healthy and what is unhealthy sometimes. They're so much used to these strategies that they may not even have this awareness what is healthy, what is unhealthy, how it is impacting me. They have not sometimes given that much time to think through this. How does these coping strategies maintain my disturbance rather than help me manage my disturbance? Some clients I see, they think that it is helping me manage my disturbance, but actually, in psychotherapy, when we do more more detailed sessions, we come to understand that these coping strategies are actually counterproductive. They are maintaining your disturbance, right? So quickly, this is what I can tell both of you.
Yeah, yeah. So again, this is all boiling down to developing awareness and educating oneself about coping strategies and about maintaining our mental health.
Right?
Yes,
And I forgot to mention in prevention, even the role of parents. With teachers, even the role of parents is very phenomenal. I think all of us should join hands and come together and create these prevention toolkits.
surely, and which we are about to uh, you know tell them through our next webinar.
Yes,
So that again, mentioning again the details for the next webinar will be put up on this page shortly after this session, and also you can access our Instagram page, Atha's Instagram page, wherein the information is already there, and the link to registration is in the bio, so you can use a link and register yourselves for the upcoming webinar. And I guess with that, we would come to an end of this session. Thank you, Asira ma'am, for so many interesting insights about suicide and depression. And I hope sincerely hope that this has reached people uh, who really need this and who could really benefit from this.
Yeah.
But overall, I had a very fun time doing this session. So thank you.
You're most welcome, Ishwari. And I think I thank all our viewers who attended this session today. This was just
Yes.
a discussion on insights about suicide and depression. There is more to it than what we have discussed. And probably we will do more such webinars. And I think our 18th October webinar is for 1 hour, and it is mostly we will be discussing the tools. So I think you will get to know more strategies there. So
Yes.
you can share your feedback and inputs for this session. And I thank Ishwari for hosting this session. It is always a great pleasure to have you as a host.
Thank you, ma'am. Pleasure's all mine.
Right. And thank you so much. I would again thank my entire team of Atha who always works really hard for creating such community programs. And we are trying to do more work in prevention. You will see it happening soon.
So please stay tuned and follow our Instagram page to have more updates about the upcoming webinars and live sessions that we always keep coming up with. And you can also follow the Facebook page, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Other
Yes.
Psychotherapy, wherein we keep uploading such sessions, and you could access our sessions and our webinars on our YouTube page. So
Right.
yes.
And one of the participants here, one of the viewers here, he wanted to have it in Hindi. I'm really sorry I couldn't do that for you right now. But we are coming with our this 18th October webinar is a mix of Hindi and English. So, sir, if you can attend that, it will help you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending.